Hello everyone, this is Angel Esquivel here. Welcome back to another movie review, and today we're going to be reviewing The Sheep Detective, directed by Kelly Balada. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that man's or woman. I think that's a man. Honestly, to be honest, I didn't even do my research when searching up the director's name, but I do know it's starring Hugh Jackman. I know that. But you know what? I'm going to start making a change. This movie's directed by this person, and it's starring these people right here. Because apparently I got a little tired of, just naming people and putting it on a paper. And, I had to write down and had to memorize how they say it. So obviously I got tired of that. So I'm going to just have it down here so you guys can see. And it's a waste of paper. So, yeah, it's kind of a new change. And starting in my next videos, I'm going to start doing the same thing. So yeah, today's movie review is going to be The Sheep Detective. See, I had to memorize that name again. So, without further ado, let's get to the review. Our movie starts off with a man who works as he is a shepherd. He's played by Hugh Jackman, and he takes care of a bunch of sheep. And one night, he gets an unknown visitor. Then the next morning, he's found laid down in the ground, all dead. And now the sheeps, they all come together. Well, not all the sheeps. It's mainly just two in particular, or three. Three sheeps in particular. I don't recognize most of their names. So obviously, our main character, who is a sheep, obviously I'll call her a red-headed sheep because obviously she's the only sheep with like red fur. Then there's another sheep with like horns. Most of them have horns, but I'll call him Memory Sheep because he's the one who only remembers everything out of all the sheeps. Because apparently they have a theme around that sheeps don't have good memory, or they like to forget things when something bad happens. But except for him, and then we have another lamb or sheep who's like a black ram. So obviously I'm gonna call him Black Sheep. So, well, them together, they find out like who was the one responsible, for their owner's death, because they're starting to realize like maybe he didn't die on natural causes. He died because someone must have murdered him. Because she learned that, well, obviously the shepherd would read like these detective stories to the sheep, and sometimes he acts like oh, maybe perhaps they're not listening, but in reality they are. So, the redhead sheep obviously learns from most of those detective books. So, they go in town and they find out like most of the other characters to see who was the one responsible of their owner's death. The funny thing about watching this movie is because this movie, obviously they had like talking animals, in a live action setting. And it's funny because it's been a while since seeing a movie like that, because obviously I feel like that's sort of like a early 2000s thing where you see, a bunch of animals talk in live action. That was obviously like the big thing in Hollywood in the early 2000s. But then like to the 2010s, and now it's like you rarely see that. But this is like the only movie I've seen so far, and I gotta say it's a really good film, especially for like the whole especially it's a family movie, and it's a really good movie. I like how they also explore like certain themes about like experiencing loss, being alone, or feeling left out. So they have a lot of, oh look, a black cat. He's watching my movie review. Shoot. Kind of scared me for a moment. So yeah, and also the actors and Hugh Jackman, obviously they do a good performance. Even though for a kids movie, obviously most of their acting is, I think one in particular, like the cop, is kind of like acts a little like cartoonish at times, but obviously it's a kids movie, so it's not meant to like take seriously. Well, maybe at times, but I think the performance is not meant to like take like seriously like an Oscar worthy performance. It's a kids movie. It doesn't need to be that serious. But I like how they actually were able to like make it cheesy, but then again funny. And for the voice actors who voiced the sheeps, lambs, they did a good performance. I actually liked how they kind of represent their voice to play of each of these like lamb characters. And I think if I recall, if I actually looked up in the casting, I remembered Bryan Cranston's name was mentioned in it. I think he was the one who voiced the black lamb or the black sheep. Honestly, I forgot what character's name he was playing, but because I realized, like, wait a minute, I heard that voice and I'm like, oh, it's Bryan Cranston. So obviously Bryan Cranston did a good job playing his role. It's it's funny because it's supposed to take place somewhere like in Denmark or Denmark, or I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. Like somewhere where people were speak English. Most of the times you hear some characters speak like American English, and then you hear British English, so it's kind of like a little confusing at times. Oh yeah, and spoiler alert. So, the reason why of the owner's murder is because he left a letter to send to one of his like children that he put up adoption for a long time ago. One of them happens to be his daughter, and one of them has to be one of their son. So he sends like what's that type? Like a farewell, final wish type letter thing. He sends that he was gonna send like $3 million to one of their children, and the redhead sheep find out that, okay, this is the motive. So we get introduced to other characters like the butcher, the guy who owns a bunch of lambs that also sells to the butcher, a lady that works at a hotel, and the daughter that recently came to visit. So they must have suspected that it could have been one of those people, because obviously it could have been for money or it could have been for other things. So I actually liked how they were for a kids movie. I actually liked how they well explained it, not only for us adults but also for like children, that like in a way that like kids could be able to understand it. Well, to be fair, I don't think kids will be able to understand it until like they'll like find out later on. But then they find out that there was another character that had involvement to the owner's murder, and it turns out that one of the characters that arrived on town was playing a journalist. He was there to like obviously like take pictures and do a story on something. But then it turns out that he was the one responsible for Hugh Jackman's character's murder, because it turns out that he was one of the children that he had, and he was there for the $3 million, so that's why he was there to kill him. And I like how the cop it's kind of interesting how the cop was able to figure it out, even though they didn't really explain much. They just kind of like tell us. I mean, I was like, but again, it's a kids movie, so obviously it's there to tell the children, look, this is how it happens. So it works in a way that I actually like how they explain it for kids to understand, and also for lazy adults that are like, oh, that's how it happened. Cool. And one of the saddest moments in the movie for me was obviously not like sad and like I cried, but more like deep down. It was when the black lamb, played by Bryan Cranston, I forgot the character's name. Obviously he was obviously there to rescue one of the redhead sheep character life, because she was being chased by dogs. So obviously he goes in there, starts beating them, starts defending her, but it cost him his life because he was badly injured. And then towards the end, obviously, I know in this movie they also introduced like another character that was it was like a little baby lamb, but they call him or her. Honestly, I couldn't tell because it sounded like a boy and a little girl at the same time, so I can't really tell. They call this lamb the winter lamb, because apparently I guess it's a thing that sheeps or lambs do not accept their children if they're born in winter, so that's why they call it the winter lamb. Because throughout the entire movie, he was sort of like pushed away. They didn't want nothing to do with that child. But then towards the end, our redhead sheep decides to, hey, you should be part of our family, and they give him a name. And then again, I forgot what. You know what? I think it was George. Yeah, I think it was George. And I think that's what the black lamb's name was, is George. Okay, I'm starting to remember. If I'm wrong, you can comment down below and say, Angel, you're dumb. That's not his name. So yeah, they accept the George into their flock, and obviously that was like such a wholesome moment for me. And towards the end, I like how this theme where they say, "Oh, after we pass away, we turn into clouds," but it's sad for them to know that it turns out that's not true. We don't turn into clouds. We just die. And I like how they also explore that theme, like about like accepting and facing your lost ones. Also, I find it a little. I also find it a little funny how they also introduce the idea of like God, and they even like explain how God is. It's like, the God is this, and he turns into bread, and people eat him. You know, I thought that was such a funny way for like to introduce him in like in a kids movie like that. And then towards the end of the movie, redhead sheep sees in the clouds. He sees George like he sees the clouds shaped as like the black lamb, you know, the goat. And I thought like also it shows that like, wow, it turns out lambs do or goats turn into clouds after all. So yeah, it's a really good movie. It's a good movie for, you know, to bring your family or loved ones. Obviously, like I went to go see it. I actually enjoyed the movie, and this is probably like a movie I would like to like rewatch, or also show one of my younger siblings, or by sibling I mean my only little sister, and my little cousins, because I feel like this is a good movie for them to watch, and perhaps they will learn from something in the next like 10 to 20 years. So yeah, good movie, good acting, good voice acting, funny movie. I also like how they're able to explore on like themes, showing like how they're able to do detective stuff. And this is and I recommend you watch this movie like if you have like children or your family. This is a really good family movie, so I do recommend you give it a watch. So my final verdict for this movie, I give it an 8 out of 10. It's a really good family movie. I know I keep saying that a lot, but I like to keep things going. Family movie. Good movie. So in conclusion, fight for the ones that you love, and remember the ones that have taken care of you for most of your life. So that's going to be today's movie review. So make sure to like, comment, share, subscribe, hit the bell notification icon up there. Make sure to follow me on my Instagram page called Thunderstruck1810. This is Angel Esquivel here, and as always,